Africa for Africans. The land of Africa is for Africans.
Muammar Gaddafi was no ordinary leader. He was one of Africa's most influential and controversial rulers. For decades, he shaped Libya and championed a bold vision: a unified Africa under one government. Whether admired or despised, his impact remains undeniable, sparking debates to this day. Even after ruling Libya for over 40 years, Gaddafi's ambitions extended far beyond his nation. He envisioned a transformed Africa. However, his story took an unexpected turn, ending not as he had imagined, but in a web of political intrigue, betrayal, and shifting alliances. Among the many betrayals he faced, one stood out as the most shocking. It came from someone he deeply trusted, a leader he considered a friend, and a nation he had long supported. That country was Uganda, and the man who ultimately turned against him was Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni. The twist? In 2016, Museveni publicly criticized the United States and the European Union for their role in toppling Gaddafi, condemning their interference in Libya and the Middle East. But if he truly disapproved of their actions, why did he betray Gaddafi in the first place? What changed? To understand this, we need to go back to the beginning, when their alliance first formed and how it unraveled into an unexpected betrayal. Gaddafi's connection with Uganda predated Museveni, dating back to the 1970s under Idi Amin's rule. More than just an ally, Gaddafi was one of Amin's staunchest supporters, providing military aid, financial assistance, and political backing whenever Uganda faced turmoil. Whether sending troops, weapons, or resources, Libya was always there. Yet, despite this unwavering loyalty, Gaddafi's relationship with Uganda took a shocking turn that would ultimately lead to his downfall. By 1979, Amin's reign collapsed, forcing him into exile. His first refuge, Libya. However, even Gaddafi couldn't shield him indefinitely, and Amin eventually resettled in Saudi Arabia, where he spent his remaining years. In Uganda, Amin's departure left a leadership vacuum. Elections were held in 1980, but their results were contested, especially by one determined man, Yoweri Museveni. Refusing to accept defeat, he declared the election fraudulent and launched an armed rebellion, leading to a brutal civil war. There was just one problem: Museveni's forces lacked weapons. Desperate for support, he first sought help from the US and the UK. However, Western powers hesitated due to his previous connections with Gaddafi. With few options left, Museveni made a bold move. He turned to the very man who had consistently supported Uganda, Muammar Gaddafi. Once again, Gaddafi stepped in without hesitation, supplying Museveni with military aid, weapons, and resources. This assistance played a crucial role in Museveni's eventual victory. Even after he solidified power in 1986, Gaddafi continued supporting him, training Uganda's military forces and even inspiring its intelligence operations. Museveni was so influenced by Libya's security strategies that he named his own intelligence agency after theirs. Yet, despite all this, Museveni would later turn his back on Gaddafi when it mattered most. What led to this betrayal? And why did Museveni align himself with the very powers he once condemned? The answers lie in the intricate web of political survival, shifting alliances, and the ever-changing landscape of global influence. Gaddafi's influence over Museveni was undeniable. Their bond went beyond mere diplomacy. It was built on trust, admiration, and a shared vision for Africa. To Gaddafi, Uganda wasn't just another ally. It was a second home. He visited so frequently that people joked he might as well have been a Ugandan citizen. But his connection to the country wasn't just symbolic. He invested heavily in Uganda's economy, infrastructure, and military. Through the Libyan African portfolio, Gaddafi acquired a 51% stake in Uganda Telecom, one of the country's leading telecommunications companies, and secured 60% ownership of Tristar Lintide, a major textile firm. And that was only the beginning. One of his boldest moves was convincing Museveni to hold on to Uganda's oil reserves. While Western nations were eager to buy the crude, Gaddafi urged him to refine it domestically and build pipelines connecting Uganda to its neighbors. His investments spanned real estate, banking, and infrastructure, with a stake in Tropical Bank of Africa, the National Housing Corporation, and the iconic Lake Victoria Hotel. Gaddafi's influence wasn't just economic, it was military as well. He played a secret but pivotal role in the Rwandan conflict, supplying arms to the Rwandan Patriotic Front, RPF, in the 1980s, and who ensured those weapons reached them. The Ugandan government under Museveni. Their alliance ran deep, making what happened next feel like the ultimate betrayal. But before that, there's another crucial piece of the story: Gaddafi's fascination with the Toro kingdom. In 2001, he took a special interest in the small but historically rich monarchy in Uganda. What made it remarkable was its king, Oyo Nyimba, who was just 9 years old at the time. Gaddafi showered the kingdom with attention and funded major projects, including the construction of the Grand Toro Palace. His generosity extended even further to Uganda's Muslim community. He financed the construction of one of the most stunning mosques in the country, a grand structure capable of holding over 3,000 worshippers. Today, it stands as the second largest mosque in East Africa, a lasting testament to his deep involvement in Uganda. Gaddafi's relationship with Museveni was as personal as it was strategic. During his visits, he often joked with him about ruling for life, questioning why he even bothered with elections. But it wasn't just talk. He actively supported Museveni's hold on power, even helping to promote his son in the military from captain to major. In both the 2001 and 2006 elections, Gaddafi provided critical backing, ensuring Museveni's victories. With such deep ties, what could have led to Museveni's shocking betrayal? And why did he turn against the very man who had helped him rise to power? The answers reveal a dramatic shift in loyalty, power, and survival in the ever-changing landscape of African politics. From the outside, their relationship appeared unshakable, built on years of trust, loyalty, and mutual benefit. But history has shown that no alliance is truly invincible. So what changed? What led Museveni to turn his back on Gaddafi after years of unwavering support? To understand this betrayal, we need to examine two key factors: Western interests and Gaddafi's ambitious vision for Africa. If you've ever heard of the idea of a United States of Africa, chances are Gaddafi's name was part of the conversation. Like Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah before him, Gaddafi was one of the strongest advocates for a single, unified African government. In 1989, during a major summit, he convinced 45 African leaders to approve the creation of the African Union, AU, replacing the Organization of African Unity, OAU. But for Gaddafi, unity wasn't just a political statement. It was the foundation for something much bigger: his ultimate vision. A powerful African superstate with a single currency, a unified military, and the strength to stand independently on the world stage. He backed his words with action, personally funding about 15% of the AU's budget during his rule. However, not everyone was on board. Western powers saw Gaddafi's vision as a direct challenge to their influence in Africa. Even within the continent, some leaders feared losing their individual control in a united system. One of the most vocal opponents of Gaddafi's plan was none other than Yoweri Museveni, the same Museveni who had once benefited greatly from Gaddafi's support. Despite Libya's military aid, financial backing, and political favors, Museveni refused to embrace the idea of African unity under Gaddafi's leadership. But why? For Museveni, the issue boiled down to power. He had spent years solidifying control over Uganda, and the thought of answering to a higher African authority threatened his grip on leadership. While he never openly condemned Gaddafi's plan, he also never endorsed it, carefully navigating the situation to maintain his own influence. To Museveni, if anyone was going to lead Africa, it had to be him. Beyond Uganda, Museveni was positioning himself as a key player in regional politics. His growing influence stretched across the continent, making him a valuable ally to the West. Uganda's military played a significant role in conflicts, especially in Somalia, where Western nations relied on his forces for stability. As his partnership with Western powers strengthened, his ties with Gaddafi began to weaken. Ultimately, Museveni had a choice: stand by Gaddafi's vision for African unity or align himself with global powers that saw Libya's leader as a threat. In the end, self-preservation won. Museveni distanced himself from Gaddafi, shifting his loyalties in a move that would change the course of their relationship forever. Where Ugandan troops were deployed to serve Western interests, Museveni wasn't just offering soldiers, he was providing strategic support. He shared intelligence, collaborated closely with agencies like the CIA, and at one point even bragged about taking a stand against Gaddafi long before others did, declaring, "I was fighting Gaddafi before you even started." That statement alone made his priorities clear. So when Gaddafi's dream of a united Africa was formally discussed at an African Union summit in Accra, Ghana, in 2007, Museveni wasted no time in shutting it down. He strongly opposed the idea, knowing it could put him at odds with the very powers that helped keep him in control. Backing Gaddafi's vision would have meant challenging the West, and that was a risk Museveni wasn't willing to take. He understood that the same forces propping him up could just as easily remove him from power if he stepped out of line. But turning his back on Gaddafi wasn't without risks. Libya had been a major source of financial and military support for Uganda, and breaking ties could leave Museveni vulnerable. Still, he made his choice. During a visit to the United States on June 13, 2008, while attending his son's graduation, Museveni held a private discussion with Jendayi Fraser, the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs. In that conversation, he dismissed the idea of a united Africa, citing the continent's linguistic and cultural diversity as major obstacles. He also accused Gaddafi of using money to buy the loyalty of smaller nations, preventing them from expressing their true opinions on the global stage. Museveni's concerns, however, went beyond politics. As tensions with Gaddafi escalated, he started to fear for his own safety. He worried that the Libyan leader might try to eliminate him, even suspecting that his plane could be targeted while flying through international airspace. In response, he made a bold move. He turned to the United States for protection. Washington, eager to strengthen its grip on the region, was more than happy to oblige. For Gaddafi, Museveni's growing ties with the West weren't the most alarming development. What truly unsettled him was how Museveni's influence in Uganda continued to expand, making it harder for Libya to push its own agenda. Then, in 2008, Gaddafi made a surprise visit to Uganda. His arrival wasn't just a routine diplomatic stop. It sent shockwaves through Museveni's government. Some even suspected it was part of a larger plan to challenge Museveni's rule. During a speech at an Arab youth event, Gaddafi made a bold shift in strategy. Instead of working through elected leaders like Museveni, he declared that his new approach was to build alliances with Africa's traditional rulers, kings and chiefs who held deep historical and cultural ties to their people. His goal? To unite Africa under a single leadership, bypassing politicians entirely. The following year, Gaddafi put his plan into action. He invited traditional leaders from across Africa to discuss his vision for a united continent. This was no longer just an ideological debate. It was a direct challenge to the political establishment, and Museveni knew it. That betrayal sealed Gaddafi's fate. Before Uganda's rulers could even consider attending his gathering of traditional leaders, Museveni blocked them from going. He saw the mood for what it was, a direct challenge to his authority. What Gaddafi didn't know was that Museveni had already been working behind the scenes to weaken him. Museveni fed Gaddafi a dangerous illusion that the US had turned a new page and was ready to invest in Libya, under one condition. Gaddafi had to give up his weapons of mass destruction. Believing that dismantling his nuclear program would bring Libya closer to the West, Gaddafi agreed. But after private talks with British diplomats, he discovered something shocking. Museveni had sold him out. The realization left Gaddafi questioning everything. He had trusted promises that now seemed empty. Publicly, he began demanding answers, insisting that Libya had honored its end of the deal while still waiting for the benefits it had been promised. "We were told that President Bush is a man of his word," he said, "but now we're not so sure." It was a critical mistake, one that cost him everything. By willingly surrendering his most powerful bargaining chip, he left himself exposed just as enemies were closing in from all sides. Since Gaddafi's downfall, Museveni has tried to position himself as the new champion of African unity, especially in finance and security. But there's a problem. While he has influence, he lacks the larger-than-life charisma and deep pockets that made Gaddafi's vision seem possible. Even if Museveni pushes forward with this idea, he's unlikely to find much support. The very forces that worked against Gaddafi would see him as a threat too. And ironically, these are the same Western powers he once sided with when he turned his back on Gaddafi. In 2021, Museveni made a surprising statement, criticizing the narrow-minded approach of the Western nations, the same ones he had once helped in their mission to eliminate Gaddafi. The shift in his tone was noticeable, but it didn't change history. The damage had already been done. One of the clearest signs of Gaddafi's inertia came when Uganda renamed the Grand Mosque he had funded and built. Originally named after him, the mosque lost its title just 2 years after his death, a move meant to smooth relations with Libya's new government. Museveni's biggest mistake may not have been his alliance with the West. It was betraying the one African leader he had always feared. And now, as time moves forward, one thing is certain: when Museveni's own reign eventually comes to an end, there won't be anyone left to shield him from the forces that once worked in his favor. Tell us what you think in the comments section below. We explore the rich history, culture, and the ongoing struggle for sovereignty in Africa. Join us in this important conversation by subscribing to our channel. By subscribing, you're not just staying informed, you're becoming part of a movement dedicated to reclaiming Africa's rightful place on the global stage. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Let's work together to spread knowledge and inspire change. Thanks for watching.